All right, folks, why don't we get started? It's 4:30 right now, and I know folks will still be joining throughout this event. We've got over 100 folks registered for today's event. If you are joining as an attendee, you will not see yourself on this conference or be able to use your audio. So if you have questions throughout the event, please type it into that Q&A feature at the bottom, or you can also type it into the chat. Toby and I will be monitoring that throughout the event, and we'll try to get through as many questions as we possibly can. Thank you again for joining tonight. We've got a huge interest, as I mentioned. This is our first ever virtual event for Aikane o Nu'uanu, and it's also serving as our general membership meeting. So if you'll indulge me for just a few minutes, I'm going to share with you a little bit more about Aikane o Nu'uanu. My name is Moani Wright Benalf, and I am the president of Aikane o Nu'uanu, which is your PTO, parent-teacher organization. So we are here to represent all of our families, to work collaboratively with the school to make sure that our keiki are taken care of. So since this serves as our official general membership meeting, I'm going to call the meeting to order officially at 4:31. So as I mentioned, Aikane o Nu'uanu is our parent-teacher organization. As you can see, we've been doing these Zoom calls as soon as the pandemic hit. So here's a screen grab of some of our board members at one of our recent board meetings. And you know, really the reason we are successful is because of the faces you see right there. They volunteer their time throughout the year to make sure that we're fundraising and we're doing everything that we need to do to make sure that the school has what it needs and that we can represent all of our families. Our mission is to make sure that we foster a spirit of ohana between our students, family, staff, and community, so that together we can make our students' pursuit of a lifelong learning a reality. We are here to support the school and that mission. And by support, I'm not only talking about fundraising, although yes, we definitely raise money throughout the year so that we can make sure that we provide things like air conditioning. That was our biggest fundraising effort last year. Was our biggest need, of course, before coronavirus occurred, was for air conditioning. Our school is hot, and when you're in the classroom, you need air conditioning. So we worked tirelessly last year to make sure that that happened, to help with subsidizing classroom supplies and field trip expenses. But we also host a number of events throughout the year so that our families can come together, get to know each other, you know, and just put faces to names. As I mentioned, we had some big highlights last year. We were able to raise enough money to install air conditioning in our third grade classroom. We held several of events again up until back when schools were shut down. We were able to replace some TVs on campus, subsidize over $5,000 worth of classroom supplies that our teachers needed. And unfortunately, just like the rest of the world, we had to make some really tough decisions. We ended up having to cancel our summer school program and our morning school program due to the health, safety, and compliance concerns. The safety of our staff, our students, and our family is our #1 priority. And so we did make those tough decisions in the best interest of everyone. We also had to cancel our biggest fundraiser of the entire year, which was Family Fun Night. So like many individuals and businesses around, our PTO is unfortunately starting this year with a budget deficit. We don't have enough money to be able to sponsor things that we normally would have. So we're having to reimagine. How can we continue to fulfill our mission in this new world? How can we make sure that we're bringing our families together safely in an environment that we can all continue to connect, to have that sense of community, and also to make sure that we can still raise those funds, because those funds are still needed today, even if we're, you know, schooling from home for a bit. We're going to need funding to help if there are classroom supplies that are needed in this new world, technology supplies, air conditioning for when we can go back and meet in person. Those are all things that we're going to start to raise funds for. We're having to reimagine how we get together. So we'll be getting together virtually. So we won't be able to be physically together, but at least we'll have the opportunity to still see each other and connect. So tonight's our first ever virtual event. I'd like you to save the date for a couple of others that we've got coming up. September 2nd, we've been working with the DOE complex area so that we can get their clinical psychologist to join us. I don't know about the rest of you guys, but as a parent, sometimes I don't know how to deal. with everything that is going on, trying to homeschool my children, work from home, and deal with all of the changes. And so he's going to come and join us and share with us some tips on how we can cope, how we can help our families come together, how we can help our children learn in this new environment. So please save the date for that. Also, I talked about fundraising in September. If you are out there shopping still, please shop at Foodland or Stack and Save and mention Aikane o Nu'uanu at checkout. A portion of your purchase will be donated to Aikane o Nu'uanu, so you don't have to do anything above and beyond other than shop at where you hopefully normally shop at and mention our name at the end. And then you can also join us every third Thursday of the month for our board meetings. So you can hear what's going on. We talk a lot about budget, what our plans are for the year, what our parent concerns, teacher concerns, and we work together to see what we need to do. Speaking of fundraisers, we also are selling Nu'uanu branded t-shirts and masks, which is what we all need, masks in this new environment. So you can actually go right now and purchase it on our website at nu'uanuschool.org. Again, nu'uanuschool.org. You will eventually need those t-shirts for when we return in person and we're able to start having field trips again. That is normally, highly encouraged to use. So please go and purchase. And who can't have any more masks? Like, we all need masks today. So why not show your school pride and purchase that Nu'uanu branded mask? And if you're looking for a way to get involved, here's my plea. We need help. We are always looking for families to be involved. Again, we are only successful thanks to the tireless work of all of our volunteers. Whether you can give 30 minutes a month or 5 hours a month, we will take it. You can contact me personally, and you all should have my email by now, but it's prez@nu'uanuschool.org. We want you. Please help. So with that, I'd like to quickly introduce you to our 2020-2021 board. Again, everything wouldn't be possible without the folks you see right there on your screen. And also on the board, who's not pictured right here, are school representatives. So Principal James Toyooka, PCNC Lori Yamada, Teacher Representative Louise Sowett, Marjorie Tupper, Erin Fukumoto, and Joe Maeda. Thank you for everything that you do. I know we can't see you, but let's give them a virtual round of applause for everything that they do. And if you are interested in serving in a small way or a big way, again, contact me. And almost done, I promise. My plea for everyone on this call today is to support Aikane o Nu'uanu. Again, we are here to help take care of the school. It gives you an opportunity to have a voice in what is happening at the school. So become a member. Packets that you're picking up this week include a membership form, but you can also join online. We've gone virtual, so you can go to our website again, nu'uanuschool.org. You can join our membership right there. It is $10 per family for the whole year. Donate, like I mentioned, we are starting this year in a budget deficit. So on our website, you can find ways to donate, volunteer, contact me, and stay connected. Check out our website. We are on social media as well. And you can, again, join those board meetings. So with that, I know I've taken up 5 minutes of our precious time for tonight, so I'm going to stop sharing this screen. Excuse me. And let's all get started. Again, a few housekeeping items. I know that more attendees have joined since the beginning. If you have questions during this event, please use that Q&A or chat feature at the bottom. We'll be monitoring it. We did receive an overwhelming amount of questions in advance, so we probably will not be able to get to everything that we received. We will do our best. Excuse me. Our event runs until 5:30, and if we're not able to get to your questions, then we will work with Principal Toyooka to do so. All right, let's get started. Mr. Toyooka, these are unprecedented times. I'm sure something you haven't seen in your years in education. With a changing situation that is happening all the time, DOE is responding, schools are then having to respond. I know you guys have been doing a lot to prepare, and our families have a lot of questions. So let's just start with next week. The DOE announced next week we come back to school. Students may come to campus on a coordinated basis to pick up materials. But breaking news today, HSTA is talking about that might not be safe. And so what is the school going to be doing next week? What will students be coming on campus next week? Will distance learning begin? What can parents expect to happen next week? We'll have to unmute you, Mr. Toyooka.
Okay, anyway, I just got an email about less than 45 minutes ago from the DOE saying that right now, what they wrote to us last Friday is going to stay the same. So from the 17th to the 20th, some students, when they call the teachers per grade level, can't come on campus. This is not to get instructions. This is for the teachers to evaluate what the student knows or get to know the student. For example, kindergarten is going to be doing it virtually for each student and kind of testing them out. And again, this will be a virtual type testing. So every child in kindergarten will be tested via computers. Grade 1 plans to have some students in small groups, like 3 or 4. And again, they'll have to arrange to come to the school to take an assessment or teachers get to know them. Grade 2 and 3, grade 3 is going to be strictly virtual. They'll be contacting their parents, see what they know, what they don't know, if they need help, how to do that virtually. But they will not be meeting with parents. 4 is going to be doing pretty much the same thing as is 5. Also next week, that was supposed to be for like distribution of books, computers, things of that nature. You know, we anticipated something happening, so we did that this week. So all the school supplies should have been distributed to all the students by now. Tomorrow, Friday, we'll be distributing the laptops that families had requested. Right now, there's roughly around 90 families, so tomorrow afternoon from 12 to 4 o'clock, it's going to be kind of a mad scene down at the cafeteria. But those families who did request a computer can come down at that time to pick up the laptops. They'll often have to sign up an agreement on that. So again, this is going to take a few seconds only to do that part. When they come, please park in the lower parking lot, because if you have a whole bunch of parents in the circle driveway, all you could have is a big mess. And if you don't have a pen, then you have to sign up these documents. It's going to add to this a mess. So anyway, when you come for your computers, please come and park in the lower parking lot. Also next week, because also sometime next week, some classes, if the kids and parents know how to use the devices that's going to be used for virtual learning, some teachers have plans to start instructions next week also.
Thank you. So if parents have questions about next week, ultimately they should contact their teachers if they have not been contacted yet, so that they know exactly what needs to happen for their specific situation. And just for clarification purposes, there are some additional school supply pickups tomorrow with a couple more grades in the morning. Personally, I know one of my grade levels is tomorrow. So again, families, if you're not sure what your situation is next week, please reach out to your individual teachers, which everyone should have noticed already. And if you don't, you can always call the school. I'm sure they have their roster of the list. So let's move over. There's a bunch of different learning models that are going to be happening, right? There's the blended learning model with our cohorts, or families have elected for 100% distance learning. I'm going to start first with just what is distance learning. So for the families who elected cohorts and have elected to have that blending learning model, this first 3 weeks are going to be a distance learning model. What should families expect? Will there be a live teacher? Is it recorded, etc.?
Okay, for those families who sign up earlier for strictly distance learning, we have 2 teachers involved in that. Marge is one, and Tanya is the next one. Margie is going to be doing from grades 3 to 5. Tanya is going to do grade 1 for right now. They'll be contacting the parents electronically. They'll be working with them. They'll be doing 2 things. They'll be using, again, as I mentioned, a program called Acellus, which we'll talk about that later on, but also include a lot of what the schools have already been doing. For example, like IXL, iReady, the Wonders, things of that nature. So this is why for the children to pick up their books is imperative, because these distance learning teachers will be referring to those books. So they have to have, they have to have those books available. Otherwise, they'll be totally lost as far as what they're talking about. The Acellus is something different again that maybe folks can help me with that later on, because I'm not familiar with the details of that particular program.
Well, why don't we stick there, Mr. Toyooka? Since you started with the families who elected 100% distance learning, why don't we just stay there? I heard you say 3rd to 5th and 1st grade. So is there 100% virtual learning available for kindergarten and 2nd grade?
For right now, because the staffing is an issue and a number of students, I had grade K, the grade level teachers, do their distance learning also. So for this first, whatever period takes, they will be doing their cohort A and B as well as a distance learning. But it's not going to be like a whole mass of students coming together one time, because all they're doing, in essence, is splitting up the classroom into 2 groups, A and B, be it cohorts or distance learning, because they won't be there. So they'll be handling all their students as if they were doing distance learning. Does that make sense?
So for those grade levels, K and 2, they will not be using the Acellus program then?
They all will. That's going to be it's a supplemental program. Okay, keep that in mind. It's not the primary program. It's a supplement. For some schools, I think you've heard where they use it exclusively for their program. But for the little that I know of this topic, that was not the intent. It's not supposed to be used as a standalone program. It's supposed to be a supplement, not supplanting.
Well, why don't I pass this over to Phyllis then? Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more about what the Acellus program is like for those families who have chosen 100% distance learning. Will there be is it a live teacher? Is it recordings? What does that experience look like?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today and allowing us to share what we have been planning so tediously to carry out. The Acellus program is an online program, and it's really designed to develop kids' skills and concepts in the area of language arts and math and several other content areas. So in its delivery, what they'll do first is provide a pre-test, a pre-assessment. And from the assessment, they'll devise some kind of learning path that will address kids from where their needs are. So as a child progresses through the program, and they'll do a lesson per skill, as they progress through the program, they'll be rated in terms of their proficiency. If a child hits 70% proficiency, then they will get another lesson to try and improve that percentage. So that lesson might be another way of teaching or a review of the key concepts. And at the same time, it'll flag the teacher that this child is receiving a second lesson. And they'll try again, do another assessment. And at that point, they'll ask the teacher to intervene, whether it be a small group gathering all the children with similar needs and doing perhaps a WebEx or some kind of direct instruction. And so the program progresses along that line. So that's a supplement, as Mr. Toyooka said. A supplement meaning it is not the main program of our content areas. So they will still receive wonders instruction, things like vocabulary development, comprehension questions, skills in nonfiction literature, as well as fictional stories and so forth. So that's all still maintained. Acellus is there to key in and focus on gaps in learning and to give them a more of a practice mode.
So is the curriculum then the same between the two programs, whether you chose a 100% distance learning or you chose in the blended learning approach?
So I think what the distance teachers will be doing is to mirror or reflect what's happening in the classroom. They're going to try to stay as much as they can to the scope and sequence of the lessons that's occurring in the classroom by using the same kinds of materials, the same kinds of assessments and strategies. It's more or less a teacher's call as to what strategies they would like to use, but it's meant to mirror the scope and sequence of the classroom.
Great, thank you. And I apologize, folks. I forgot to introduce our wonderful panelists at the start of this, so let me take 2 seconds. James Toyooka, who you know is our principal of the school. Phyllis is our curriculum coordinator, and also as a panelist is Janice Cam, who is our student services coordinator. And then my co-host tonight is Tobias Huber, Toby, who is also on our PTO board. I apologize for not introducing everyone first. So Mr. T, a question actually just came in. One teacher for grades 3 to 5 on a distance learning program. That seems, you know, like maybe there's a lot of students. How many students is that they're going to be, you know, with, and how are they going to get support with only one teacher for those many grade levels?
Okay, that's Margie. There's a good and a good and a bad of that. A bulk of those long distance learner are from grade 4, you know, roughly 17 or 18. She is a 4th grade teacher, so she's very, very familiar with that curriculum, and she knows what they need to do and what they are going to do. The next highest group is grade 5, and I think, what was the chance, about 12 or 11? Something like that. Anyway, but a lot of them were her students. Half of them were probably her students. So she knows their strengths and weaknesses. So those two she has kind of fairly much under control. Grade 3, she's know what kids should have coming to grade 4, so she'll have an idea there. Marge is also a person who's very diligent. She just goes into looking at their curriculum. She's talking story with some of the teachers as far as like lessons, things like that. She knows how to use the Common Core for the standards, things of that nature. And she plans to do them not all at once. This is why we're having distance learning. It's going to be broken down to cohorts either, well, I'll use the word cohort since everyone's familiar with that word. So cohorts A or B. So one day it's going to be a particular group of students, the next day the other group of students. And she'll be assigning this, she'll be talking to them at that point and assigning lessons for them to do on other days.
So for parents who have signed up, again, I'm going to stick with the folks who have chosen the 100% distance learning. This is a new program. Acellus is going to be a new program. Will there be training and workshops for families in advance on how to use this?
That's a Phyllis question.
We are trying to coordinate training for all of our teachers, since all of them will be using that program. And with the schedule that's coming out with the kids next week, we're trying to focus in on a time where all teachers, of course, can be present, probably a Wednesday faculty meeting time. As far as what they have for parents, I'm not really sure. I guess we'll find out a little bit more when we do actually sit in on the training session.
Great.
I think
I've got just a couple.
I think what you have to understand is that we have this questions in our mind because we just paid for the program on Monday. So up to that point, we didn't have much access to the training themselves. So we spent a sizable chunk of change for the Acellus, but we just signed up Monday, this past week. So this is why we have this, we're not 100% sure of what's on the program because it was not told to us or offered to us. But now we're
Understand. I'm going to just ask a couple more questions on this, and I'm going to move over for our families who have chosen that blended learning model. There's a couple more questions again for this one.
Well, Wani,
yeah.
Sorry, this is Janice, and this is probably maybe a Mr. T question. Does Margie have any PTT help specifically for math for those 100% distance learning students?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
You know the answer to that.
Well, then I thought maybe you should share that. I think that's what they're asking, is that it seems like an exorbitant amount of students,
Yeah.
and it I think it's someplace about high 30s is what her load is like, and the concern in the Q&A or chat is looking like, okay, I'm a little concerned, really, that many kids, one teacher, 3 grade levels, how are you really going to meet my child's needs? So I think you share the math part, maybe that's what will answer the question.
She's good, isn't she? Anyway, yeah, because we were talking about that, Phyllis Johnson and I, and how to help her. And we had, I think all of you know Sean Nakamura. He's an engineer by profession, so he's excellent at math. And he's going to be doing the math portion for grade 3, 4, and 5 for Margie. So they'll have an experienced person who has taught math here for, gosh, 5, 7, 8 years now. Quite a long time. But he's going to be helping her out. And the other thing that I was writing to the teachers is that on our PD day, which is set for the 20, when is it for? I think the 28th of this month.
28.
28, okay. At that time, I want the teachers to come back, especially the distance learning teachers, and tell us what worked, what didn't work, where are the problems, like a corrective problem, and dialogue this information. Because hopefully, if they can survive with a little bit more help, we'll offer help that they need. But until they actually try it, we're running around in the dark trying to guess for them. But once they get running, then they can tell us they could help them. But that's going to be discussed on 28 also.
Great. I'm going to ask 2 more really quick questions again. I want to get over to the blended learning because a lot of our families have chosen blended learning. So 2 quick questions. For those who have chosen 100% distance learning, do you know approximately what the ratio is between asynchronous and synchronous learning, i.e. a live teacher or a non-live teacher? That was going to be directed probably at Phyllis or Mr. Toyooka.
I'll take that. So synchronous and asynchronous learning will be determined by the teachers probably as they go along and see the needs of the kids. So it may be a skill that they want to introduce, and it'll be a whole group. Check-in at 9, we're going to be working on main ideas for this morning, and then I'm going to assign you this work, and please do it on your own and make sure it's completed by tomorrow. So that would be the asynchronous kind of instruction. So I think it's going to be where the teachers determine as they go along to see what skills they would have to cover more intensely than others.
Thank you. And will this also be on a normal school scheduled day?
It should be within the school hours that they conduct all instruction, assessments, and everything else.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move over again. I'm sure we've got a lot of families who are on this call right now who have chosen the blended learning approach. So the blended learning we also refer to as cohort A and cohort B. That means when we are able to return back to school in person, there'll be a mixture of folks who will be attending school live, and then also those who will be learning from home, and we'll be rotating basically every other day depending on what your schedule is. So let's talk a little bit more about that. For families who have chosen that program, what is their distance learning experience going to be like? Is it the same as what we just discussed with those who have chosen 100% virtual, or is it a different experience?
It's going to be similar but different. For example, the cohort who comes on a Monday, for example, they'll be giving live instruction, and some of the work that they're given by the teachers is probably double so they can do it the following day. The following day comes, the teacher will probably teaching the same instruction, but to cohort B. In the meantime, cohort A, the teacher will be checking up on them to see if there's any issues and their attendance. But they won't be concentrating too much on the cohort A on the cohort B day. So it's gonna be concentration of those kids in front of them will be having the most emphasis. And those who are in distance, they'll be checking up on them. not too much to give instructions as much to just ask if, are you guys okay, etc. This part is going to be kind of dependent on the teacher, because some teachers are very, very comfortable with, especially with what was it, Google Classroom, so they can just multitask on that. For them, there's no problem. Others are less comfortable, but will check in with the students. That's one thing that don't think that because you're at home that the teacher's forgetting about you. The children have to sign on to the teacher daily just to confirm that they are there. And I guess if you have questions at that point, they can always ask the teacher that. They may not get answered immediately, but they will probably be answered later on.
Mr. T,
So
I
just
have
to recap, I mean,
real
go,
quick.
Toby.
Marjorie Tupper wanted to weigh in on this, so I'm
Okay.
gonna unmute her real quick and allow her to talk. So I'm gonna promote her to a panelist real quick. Let's see. There we go. Marjorie, you should be online. There we go. Can you hear us?
Sorry.
I'm not sure she's quite connected yet. Mwani, you can go ahead until we get Marjorie on.
Sure. So Mr. T, did I hear correctly then? So basically on the days that the students are not in school, they will be doing their distance learning, will be primarily work sent home with maybe a couple of check-ins. So parents will need to take on teaching responsibility. Is that correct?
So I think it's like every day. Our parents have usually taken on some not so much teaching as just for helping the child muddle through the thing.
So one of the questions we received for some of the families, if there's questions or work that they're not sure how to teach their child maybe has questions and the family can't assist, what should they do?
I would suggest writing to the teacher, because again, don't call, because again, they'll be busy with the other classroom. But if you write to them, I'm 99% sure that they will get back to the parents when they have the time. And again, it won't be in 2 weeks, probably within a few hours or less. That's what I'm guessing, because they're pretty diligent with that. But a lot of them don't keep watching the computer. That's the other issue, because some teachers I know that if I write to them in the morning, they won't answer me till that afternoon, which means that they've been on their class the entire time. So it's going to vary from teacher to teacher.
Thank you. I know we're trying to get Marjorie Tupper back on, so just we're going to keep asking questions so we can get her on.
Yeah, she says she's lost sound. Oh, there we go. Now we can see her. Can you hear us? Well, in the meantime, real quick question regarding cohort A and cohort B, Mr. T. So it sounds like to me, and I've had a bunch of people ask me this question as well. If let's say you're in cohort A and you have Monday, on Tuesday, it's not like there's a new set of instruction that the students from home will be tuning in. So there's only really 2 days of fresh instruction from the teacher. The rest of the days, the students are basically on their own. So it's not like on Monday, I get instruction, let's say at school, and on Tuesday when I'm at home, I can tune into what is being taught. So it's a new set. So it's really the same. Monday and Tuesday will be the same instruction, just to a separate group. Is that correct?
It should be. Phyllis, have you ever from the teacher? Because Phyllis dialogues with the teacher, but that's my understanding. Okay.
Yeah, I'm hearing that teachers would like to do the same lesson for cohort A, cohort B, and the days where they are not in school, those are days to perhaps carry out small projects or to practice using that skill that they were taught in person to do. So it would be a day of practice as well as some online lessons. We still have iReady, iExcel that the kids will be engaged with?
So I'm going to ask maybe a kind of tough question, and we know that this is obviously a different world that we live in today. Knowing that those be 2 days, basically, that we'll be focusing on the same lesson plan, will students end up learning less this year than they historically would have in a normal environment?
You know, that's the challenge in a pandemic. There is so much that's out of our control, and what the teachers have themselves voiced frustration at. So what they decided to do is to double up on the time devoted to language arts, double up on the time devoted to math, and present that kind of learning through perhaps projects or some other engaging type of activity. So they're well aware of the deficit, of the lack of instruction over the past months, and they are trying to fit in as much as they can in the days afforded to them.
Thank you. Thank you for this. We know these are definitely challenging times and definitely not something.
Morning. Also, people have to remember that because the class size will be half what it usually is, the teacher will have more time to instruct each student individually. So the depth of instruction is going to be deeper.
That's good to know. Yeah, because I think there is a concern out there that they're basically kids are getting half the day or less than half the days of instruction. So with the understanding that having smaller class size, you'd be able to fit in more on a given day in an ideal scenario. That's somewhat reassuring for parents, I hope.
Can I also just add to that one of the data, so in addition to teacher feedback, teacher evaluation, which some can sometimes argue is subjective, iReady does provide an objective measure, which is norm reference. And those norms are established pre-pandemic. So scores that are derived from diagnostic evals, which are done at least 3 times a year and can be done more frequently, will help to evaluate whether students are falling behind and therefore need something extra, or if they're still on course and are making the appropriate growth.
Thank you. That's very helpful to hear. You know, one of the questions families had asked, of course, having the concern that maybe there might be less learning, will there be tutoring available? That's been something that I know has been available in the past for students who maybe need it with, you know, in the morning, the extra iReady support, you know, and some additional tutoring after school. Is that program still going to be available today?
Okay, so I think that's me. So that is what we've called Nahoku, which we've done reading as well as math. Yes, we will be doing that. That being said, some of the diagnostic criteria that we've used to establish whether a child needs that remediation, those scores are not available. Some of those things to hit the ground running. Some of those things were end of year iReady diagnostic, as well as SBA scores for grades 3 and 4, which are now incoming 4 and 5 students. And then sometimes even Terra Nova scores are used to further identify grade 3 kids that are right on the cusp. So those diagnostics are not available. So we do need to wait to see what are these beginning of school year diagnostics are, what are the teacher recommendations, and then we'll go from there. How that's going to be delivered is something that's still evolving, and it has to do with how do we provide those supports for students without breaking the OHA bubble for the students that are coming in cohort A or cohort B. And then also it's also a staffing need. How do we bring on the staff to be able, because for those support services, the research is at least three contacts a week. How do we do that? We probably can't do, and of course that research is pre-pandemic. So we can't do the 3 times a week. We might have to be a little bit creative, and it might have to be virtual. So some of their stay home days, I don't know what else to call it, but on the days where they're not in school for cohort services, it might be virtual. Optimal, no, but hopefully it'll address the need. And that's the same thing with other supplemental services, including EL. So any student second language direct services, they're looking at some face-to-face, but there's going to be more opportunities for distance just because of the bubbles. We don't want to take them out from the gen ed class. They're only on campus 2 days a week. Same thing with speech, any speech club students. So if you were a student receiving speech club, all of the supplemental services terminate at the end of the school year, and they have to re-up at the beginning of the next school year, again, data driven. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to diagnostically close out and either discharge club students. So if you're one of those, shoot me an email and we can have the new speech person take a look. Again, it might be virtual though.
Thank you, Janice. And that's janice.cam@k12.hi.us for those who are curious. Janice, just to be really clear, so it's really great to hear that these SPED services, ELS services are still going to be available this year, but it just may be different. Is that correct? I mean,
sorry, just to be clear, those are just supplemental services. It does not apply to special education, 504, any IDE services. Those services are different, and those parents, students with IEPs, all of those parents have been reached out to, and they all have been given their additional options for additional in-person services.
Thank you. So then for not the SPED population, for, you know,
Right.
the others like
Right.
speech therapy and, you know, the other programs you mentioned, one of the questions that came in is, are you saying that it's going to be limited, or is it just, or is it different? Or, I mean, if you can just
It's going to
elaborate.
be different.
Will they?
It's going to be different. It's probably not going to be 3 contacts a week. That being said, it's still evolving. It is going to be different though, and some of it may have to be virtual. I mean, obviously, if you're a full distance family that has opted for that, we still need to provide supplemental services if that's what your child needs, or at least afford you the opportunity to access it. But if you're full distance, the services would have to be distance. And then same thing, if your cohorts, it might end up being on your stay home date via distance learning, opposed to asking parents to bring kids in on those days for 1-hour sessions and then pick them up and take them home. I'm not sure that would be really ideal or convenient for families.
Thank you. So with that, let me check. You know, we've talked some about, you know, not being able to close out the end of last year. You know, also, you know, we were all learning at home last year for a few months. So will there be tests or some kind of tests that occur at the start of this year, so we know where our children are at and understand if they're at where they're supposed to be, or maybe they need supplemental services or falling behind?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's a test as much as an assessment. So I think like next week, some teachers are going to use that as an assessment period. So not testing in a true sense of the word, just to see where they are via some type of assessment piece. Wait, Margie wants to say something, and she's probably the best person to ask. Margie.
Mrs. Tupper, can you hear us? Do you have audio now?
I have audio now. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, okay.
The floor is yours.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just wanted to let you all know that I'm figuring in terms of teaching the 3 different grade levels. I would run it so that kind of like what happens with the GT students, where it's higher level critical thinking skills, but, and I would use, for example, say writing, and it would be to the 3 different grade levels, but of course there are separate but yet similar standards for each of the grade levels. So yes, it is a lot, but that's what I'm figuring I'd be able to do. Similarly with math as well, because from the practicing I was doing over the 4th quarter with my 4th graders, now 5th graders, that's generally what I did. I would aim for the higher level thinking skills to engage all of the students, and then those students that might have been having trouble, I'd meet with them separately in smaller groups. As far as testing goes, I know that we'll be using different assessments in our Wonders program, in our Stepping Stones, that's the math program. And I know that we also have access to, for the students, iReady perhaps, iExcel, some of these online types of programs, I believe will enable us to gather enough data to let us know what level the students are at.
Thanks. And Mrs. Tupper, just to be clear, what you're speaking about right now is for your students that you're covering for virtual learning, 100% virtual learning, grades 3 to 5, or is the information that you just shared applicable to all students at Nuuanu?
Definitely for the distance learners. I can speak also for grade 4, but listening and speaking with the other teachers, it does sound like that would be the case where we are using basically what we have. To the extent that we use those items, that differs by teacher, but generally that's what we've all been talking about.
Thank you, Mrs. Tupper. We've only got 12 minutes left in today's meeting, and I really want to make sure we get through some of those big questions that we've received multiple times. So I'm going to jump back over to that blended learning and the cohort AB group. Same question as the virtual learners. Will those programs also happen during normal school hours? So if you're in school physically, is it a normal school hour? And if you are home, teaching your child at home, is that a normal, will those programs be during normal school hours?
Yeah, for those students who are at school, it's going to be like a normal school day. So depending on what grade level you have, because we're staggering the start and end of the day. So, but the number of hours they're staying at school will be the same as if it's a regular school, it's a typical school day. The kids at home, from what I've been reading from the teachers, the morning hours would be a lot of instructions given to the students, and the afternoon portion, like 12:30, 1 o'clock, something like that, till the end of the school day would be them actually doing their work. Okay, so teacher will be giving, again, instructions, and the kids have all day they'll do it. They'll probably double up on the work that they give when the kids are here, but again, it's deeper so that kids will learn more per day. And in a second day, they'll be able to do it at home. And again, it's going to be the same thing. They have to check with the teacher as far as like morning time, probably mid-afternoon, to make sure that they're on task per DOE instructions.
Thank you. This, you know, these are challenging times, of course,
Oh, yeah.
for the school, for your teachers, and for parents. We've got families who, you know, are still working and having to go in person to work, having grandparents watching their kids, or, you know, anyone that they can secure right now who maybe are not as comfortable teaching, or, you know, just really can't. So will there be any kind of special accommodation for families who cannot log their child in during the live teaching time, or be able to do those lessons during the normal hours that will be provided?
That's a very good question. At this point, Phyllis, Judge, you guys any idea how we may work around that? Because, you know, with these, I haven't given much thought to that right now, seriously. But that's something that we need to address.
I think it's probably a case by case basis, and those special arrangements really should go back to the classroom teacher, as they can provide that instruction either on a one-to-one level. Some teachers were talking about having, quote, office hours, so that if children are confused or have questions, they can contact the teachers at that time. But again, that's a teacher by teacher scheduling thing. All scheduling is different. So you're gonna have to contact your teachers about that.
Thank
Along
you.
those lines, and I'm sorry to interject here, along those lines, but and this is a hypothetical at this point, but given, you know, the way COVID is exponentially rising in the state, there is a possibility, some say a high likelihood, that we may go back on lockdown, in which case, what would that mean to the cohort system? Would that mean that everything would shift to 100% virtual learning? And if that's the case, what type of flexibility is the school able to provide in terms of infrastructure, in terms of schedule, and so forth, to accommodate all families? Or would we have to expect to go back to the system we had in the spring, where it's basically on a case by case or classroom by classroom basis, where those classrooms will have to make decisions on how to move forward?
I think at this point in time, one good thing is we have 2 teachers willing to do the distance learning, so that will be continued, the distance learning part. If, you know, hopefully not, if we have total lockdown, then the classroom teachers would be responsible for their learning via either personal, all will be distance at that point. So the classroom teacher will be doing that area. The only positive thing about that, you know, is that the sizes could be small, because we now have cohort A and B, the numbers will be half as many children. Like before, when it first happened, the teacher had the entire classroom. So I'm doing 20 or 30 kids virtually. That made it extremely difficult. But now you might have 7, 10 at the most, say, half your size. So it makes it that much more doable, because now the teacher, even though it's virtual, they can have more time with each child, explaining a little bit more in depth, as opposed to trying to watch your screen and find out who's behaving, who's not there, things like that. So the teachers right now will be, I know they'll be experimenting. They will be, because it has to be, because for the next 2 or 3 weeks, and they'll get a hang of it. And again, the main thing is they have a platform that they can communicate with their kids easily, professionally, and that they can get the feedback that they need. Because that's the important part, is getting the feedback.
Yeah, I think that'll be essential, and communication will be key with your teachers, and that's part of the responsibility as parents that we'll have to make sure we communicate our end of the situation. Let's say if we don't go into a lockdown situation, but there are some parents that are starting to become uncomfortable with the scenario of sending their kids through the cohort system, just given the number of cases and so forth. Is there any flexibility in terms of mid-semester saying, you know what, I need my children or my child to move to all virtual? Is that a possibility?
Yep. You want to distance learning, because I think parents always have their right. You know, they can change it whenever they like.
So
That I know.
families could switch from cohort to full distance or distance to full cohort at any time throughout the year?
Well,
Or
cohort to distance learning. Janice, can you go?
So you can switch from cohort to distance at any time, but you cannot, once you go to distance, you are locked in. The families that have opted in for distance, you have signed a contract that opted in, and that's actually something from state office that you've locked in through the end of the semester. regardless of whether the school opens or not. That also, I think, and Mr. T, correct me if I'm wrong, but that there's a cap on Marge's class, right? So any future students in those grade levels, they would be shifted to a different teacher, not necessarily Mrs. Tupper.
For some of the families who have emailed, who have chosen full distance, you know, obviously some families chose full distance before really understanding what that meant, what program was going to be chosen. As they're learning more about it tonight, or they've been doing research on their own, maybe they've signed the contract but school hasn't begun. Are they able to opt out now, or able to opt out and go back to cohort?
I don't think a lot of the family have signed that opt-in form yet. So because they did not sign the contract yet, they will have that option. Did a lot of parents get that, Janice, or? You're still muted.
The families who did the pickups, yes, was it yesterday? Yesterday and today, they, for the most part, got the forms and signed it and turned it in. That being said, there's families that didn't come, and there's still the grade levels that are, or classes that are tomorrow. Mostly parents are going the other way. Mostly they chose a cohort, and now there was 300 something, and mostly they seem to be going the other way. Now they just go, oh, we're going full distance for a month anyway. I might as well just continue for this semester.
Thank you. So just to be clear, because I see something still coming in on the chat, what was just shared was that if you have chosen a cohort blended learning approach and would like to switch to full distance, that can be done at any time. But if you have chosen full distance, once you have signed that contract, you are locked into a full distance learning model for the entire semester. Question, let's switch over to some grades. How will grading be done in this new year for whether you're full distance or you're also on this blended learning and also on the grading? How will homework be turned in?
For those teachers who are using Google Classroom, I think there's a homework system, a turn-in kind of system already embedded in Google Classroom. That's in place. Other teachers, I think for those that are not using Google Classroom, may ask parents to take a screenshot of the child's work and submit that. So in terms of turning in, I think they're trying to be very creative with that, but those are the two methods that I know of. Grading, again, is gonna be up to the teacher how they grade. They're gonna take a look overall at how the child has performed in all the subjects, including online, and try to stay within even discussion groups, trying to grade them in collaborative conversations with the kids and so forth. So it's going to be several different ways in which they establish a grade. And so that's probably going to be very similar to pre-COVID days, but taking into some account the delivery of instruction, because as we know, it's different when a child is in a classroom under your system of classroom routines and behaviors, and when they're out there on a screen and teacher is teaching through a computer. So that said, it's going to be really a system of grading that varies from teacher to teacher.
We are right at time right now, and I hate to put y'all on the spot, our wonderful panelists. Are you guys willing to hang out for an initial 10 minutes so we can just try to get through a few more questions live? And attendees, we have gotten so many questions. If you saw my Word document, you wouldn't believe it. But so we are not going to be able to get to everything. We're just trying to get through some of the big questions that have been asked repeatedly. Would y'all mind hanging out for an additional 10 minutes and we'll wrap?
Sure.
I'm fine.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to switch over to some safety questions that we received, and Mr. T, I know you sent out some emails regarding this, but maybe some of our families just haven't received it. Can you talk a little bit and share a little bit about what are some of the health and safety measures that are going to occur when students do return to campus?
We have a lot. When they first come on, well, here's the thing. Originally, we want a lot of thermometers, not no-touch thermometers. Now we're hearing that that might not be a good thing. But anyway, when the kids come here, again, they'll be down in the cafeteria. We will not allow any parent or anybody to go up to the class up until 10 to 8. At that point, we'll send up the kids in groups, small groups. First it'll be 1 and 3, 10 minutes later, K and 4, 10 minutes after that, 2 and 5. We don't want them to mingle as they walk up to the classroom. When passing in front of the office, we all have sanitizers in front of the office for them to make sure they sanitize their hand. We have directional arrows on how they're supposed to walk. They will not be allowed to borrow any books from the library because that seems to be a source of problem. When they enter the classroom, they enter through one door and out the other. At every entrance, there's a soap dispenser as well as sanitizers. When going to the restrooms themselves, the teachers have to monitor them, and we have a little system outside each restroom in which a student, with a little kukui mat saying that they're there. So if the thing is all up, that means do not go into the restroom. When a child finishes using the restroom, take it down, then the other child can go in. Recess is going to be split from 2 recess to 4. For example, we used to have the lower grades, well, everyone come on at 10 o'clock and end at 10:15. Now we're going to split it. So at 10 o'clock to 10:15, grades 1, 3, and 4, I believe, are going to have recess. When they come back at 10:15, from 10:15 to 10:30, grades K2 and 5, I believe, will go out for their recess. So they'll make sure the smaller amount of students out at any time, and because each grade level has less amount of students, the idea of running into each other and grouping will be much, much less. So keeping a 6 feet distance should be quite simple, because we'll just have half the amount of student and half the amount of coming at one time. Same thing with lunch. We stagger the time a little bit more so there have less kids in the cafeteria at the same time, because we're trying to preserve their bubble. And again, all the tables are such that you all facing one direction. They be limited to, I'm thinking maybe 40 people at the most at one time in the caf. So when they go out, another 40, by the time it should be, the lunch should be over. And again, the second lunch is the same thing. One group will go earlier at 12:30, and the next group goes at 12:45. So we separate as much as possible. After school, same thing. Grades 1, 3 will leave at usual time, whatever day that is. Then grades K and 5 will leave, K and 4, leave 10 minutes after that. And grades 2 and 5, 10 minutes after that. So there'd be a 20-minute stagger time. And again, this is to make sure that the pickup and then mingle down at the curb too much.
How often and how frequently will high touch areas be cleaned?
Pretty much, I wouldn't say constantly, I wouldn't say hourly, but often. Certain areas like the rail, we have the spray that we spray down because we know people touch that. So that's probably sprayed more often than anyplace else. People are talking about the poles, but we have too many poles to spray everything down. So hopefully, the teacher has to tell kids, don't touch the poles. We have spacing between, we have Xbox all over the place to keep the distance between the students like that. And again, the doorknob's not too much of a problem because the teachers open it up in the morning time and then it's locked. So no one touches the doorknob. The light switch, pretty much the same thing also. The teacher turns it on and it stays on. So the other high touch areas would be like the sink, the drinking fountain. And again, they'll do that quite often. I can't tell you every hour, but that will be done. Not the spout, but just the outside where you touch. And for the office, because we have the drip down type, which is good. So that way, no one touches that. So the water be good.
Okay. So one more question. If a student, a teacher, a family member who comes to campus perhaps ends up having COVID-19, what is the school's protocol in this case? And what is the school's protocol if there's a suspected case? And I know this is touchy because I
Oh, no,
understand
no,
I've
no.
read HSTA's thing today with DOE, but
Oh,
what
no.
is our school's protocol?
Here's a protocol. Okay, Janice,
And will that be shared with families? Because you're holding a document up.
actually, it's meant for the school. Janice, you want to take a crack at this?
We had to, over the past couple of weeks, all those training and videos and so forth, and that was specifically something I looked for. Like, are we gonna know? Like, are parents gonna know? Or when are we gonna find out? 2 weeks later? All of that. Those were all of my personal questions, and I watched all of the videos, but I watched that one very specifically. There is a principal called the CAS called these people, and so forth and so forth. It was a long chain of events. Honestly, the training was a video and a handout. So that's why I didn't want to answer this question. Mr. T, it's back to you because I don't have a great answer.
Okay, yeah. So part of the protocol is simply if a child has any type of any symptom, we call the parents immediately have the child picked up. The child, again, it's up to the parents too, because if they have any of those COVID-19 symptoms, the coughing, the fever, the headaches, etc., the parents have to not give aspirin, but keep the child at home. Okay, and again, they recommend that maybe going to the doctors, but the fear that, not the fear, the concern that I have is depending on the doctor and the type of test he gives, because some tests come back within what, colleagues at 15 minutes, the mayor a few hours. When my daughter-in-law, for her, it was 7 days to get the results. So they're saying until you get the results to stay home. And this pertains to the flu also, because the flu and the COVID, the fever and things like that, is being very similar. So that the nurses are telling us, the Department of Health is saying, if the child has no symptoms, stay home, and they're saying for 10 days. Okay, it may not be a COVID, but if you have a fever, things like that, stay home for 10 days. This is the thing that it keeps morphing with the Department of Health. So I don't want to second guess them, but think of the well-being of everybody. But these are the type of instructions that myself and my health aides are getting. We have an isolation room that we showed them, and it came out okay. What we have in place is good. If the child comes in the room, we'll isolate that person in that room. It's in a health room itself, but we took a lot of things from there. So the health aide can see the person, but the family has to come immediately. And the concern that we had was a lot of families don't come immediately. So I was telling Sally that if other kids are hurt, with cuts and bruises, we'll bring those children into the conference room.
Mr. Toyooka, I'm sorry, I just want to move this forward. Did I hear you correctly in that if a student ends up getting sick on campus, they're going to go to the health room, they're going to be taken into an isolation area and sent home. They're not allowed to return to campus until they have been fever-free, but there is not a requirement to take the COVID-19 test, even though you spoke about that, correct?
Yeah, we don't give the COVID-19 test, but if the parent decides to take the child to get a doctor to get the test, this is where it gets kind of interesting, because if the child did have or does have it, then the parent should call the school up, and we'll go to the routine that Janet just mentioned, where we have to call up the CAS, they call up all these other people. These are, we're talking the state people, they call the Department of Health. Department of Health will send somebody down there to examine where the child was, possible cross-contamination. It becomes complicated after that. So the thing is that once a child has this, then I think myself and Sally have to figure out, okay, where was this child? Where did the child come from? If it was only for the classroom, then okay, classroom. Then we'll have that information already set.
So I have a follow-up. Excuse me, Monty. I've just got a quick follow-up on this. So let's say I, as a parent, find out that another child in my child's classroom was sent home with fever-like symptoms. You know, oftentimes they're able to transmit a virus days before that. So my child would have been exposed. Am I going to be informed that a child in my son's classroom was sent home, and then will there be a protocol in place to quarantine those other kids in case, because that particular child, according to you, is not required to take a COVID test. But I think a lot of parents would err on the side of caution and go, okay, if they were sent home, there's a likelihood that might have been COVID. So what's the process here? Is there a process in place?
That's where it gets touchy.
Can I say that I think that that's some of the written guidance that HSTA is asking for is, where is that? How will we know? How soon will we be told? I mean, the DOE released I don't know, a couple of days ago or maybe last week that it was by complex area. Well, that's 30 schools, I mean, or 30-ish schools. So those are some of the written guidance that HSTA is asking for, because at this point, school level, I don't think we have great answers for that.
Thank you, Janice. I'm glad that you brought that up, because that has definitely been in the news lately, that there is definitely guidance that DOE HSTA is requesting from the Department of Health, and in which case the schools will need to follow suit, right? Once that's out there. We have received some questions, and I just want to end up saying this and make sure I understand this correctly, that there have been questions out there with a number of changes that are occurring, why they're occurring, why is the school constantly flip-flopping? And I just, my understanding is that the school is part of a larger statewide entity called the Department of Education, and that we as a school, individual school, need to follow the DOE's what the DOE puts out for the entire state. Is that correct? So every decision and when we've gone from in-person to distance to wherever is following really what the Department of Education is putting out there.
Correct. Because if we could make our own decision, it'd be different, but we don't have that prerogative. And it's,
Thank you.
and even on those, like, so many people feeding the department, all over the place. So it's a tough call.
I'm going to ask one more question in terms of safety, because I know a lot of the questions that have come through on our chat are around this, and I'm not going to ask all of those questions because a lot of them are around contact tracing and things of that nature, which again, we are going to have to follow whatever the Department of Health has put out, and there is that request in there with them. But you mentioned earlier about temperature checks. Will temperature checks occur at our school?
We have the equipment. We will be taking it, but certain time, like for example, I'm thinking a good time would be because we cannot go into the classroom because that's the so-called bubble. We might give the teacher or maybe the healthy, maybe we might be outside the classroom as you walk in, take temperature check. Then we cannot take temperature of teachers. That's an HSTA thing. They can take their own, but we cannot take it for them. So again, my thoughts are. Myself, my health aide, for the classrooms, that's to enter, take a fast check, because there won't be that many kids in going to the classroom. So that should not be that difficult. And I plan to do that when I'm down in front of the cafe in the morning anyway, because it's quick. And again, be a small amount of students, so it's not gonna be much of a problem.
I do want to hold true to my promise that I would only keep you on for 10 minutes, even though I've kept you on for 15. So let me just ask a couple of last minute questions and we'll do a really fast wrap. This has been a trying period for everyone, for you, for the teachers, for families at home. Again, families out there, we are coordinating a family specific workshop in September on emotional support for us. But what about our students? Is there any kind of emotional or social support that our children can get through the school?
At this point, it's going to be the teachers talking to them. And if they need, we have our counselor. She does the social emotional learning. Every year, kids are referred to her. I'm sure she's going to have directions from the the district about how to handle that, because we're not going to be unique on that. Children feeling uncomfortable. I told my teachers that before a few weeks ago, that the kids will feel scared. You know, all of a sudden they're at home with their parents, always wearing a mask, and now they're coming to school with other kids. They may know some kids, they may not know some kids, but the trauma that's already embedded in their brain from watching the news or talking to their parents or things like that is going to be embedded. How severely these kids take it, this is what the teachers have to kind of be really calm about this and just explain to them, you know, this is a normal feeling that you're going to go through. And it is normal, the idea of fear, because my teachers are afraid and they're adults.
So if a child is needing some kind of emotional support, your advice is that they speak with the teacher and the teacher will speak with the school counselor?
The teacher will talk with the child, and the child needs more help than she's capable of doing it. Then they can refer to the counselor.
Thank you. Okay. One more question with regard
Sorry,
to
Monty,
classes.
can I just add on to that? If it goes beyond, if it's a 1 or 2 time, just a short time limited, that's when counselor would address it. If it's something that goes beyond the scope of that time limited nature, or it's looking like we have something that requires more intensive mental health services, that's at that point, we would then be talking about possible referral and accessing services from Dr. Tolley, who is our complex clinical psychologist doing the presentation for the parents, as well as we also have a behavioral health specialist that we can access. So teacher first, teacher will refer to counselor. If it goes beyond that, then we need to start seeing perhaps what other avenues and what we need to do in order to access those things.
Thank you, Janice. I mean, that's fantastic to hear that there is that level of support, especially in today's age, and what everyone is going through. So that's really great to hear. Families, again, your teachers are there for you. Your school is there for you. I mean, I've heard that repeatedly throughout today's conversation. I'm going to ask just one more quick question before we wrap to Phyllis. One of the questions is around specifically what kind of classes will we have? So we've talked some about, of course, you know, literacy and math. Will the school continue to offer other programs such as Hawaiian study, STEM, technology that we've historically offered? Will that be part of the curriculum this year?
With Hawaiian studies, we currently don't have a Hawaiian studies teacher on board. And we're not sure of our resources in terms of finding a person for that position.
Phyllis, can I say something about that?
Sure.
She did write to us saying that she's willing to do it virtually. So I think I sent out that message to the teachers who wants to have Hawaii study done virtually. Grade 4 accepted that offer.
Oh.
Okay, but only grade 4. Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah. And in terms of science, social studies, teachers will be planning those lessons. We still have mystery science as part of our science curriculum. So they'll be doing that. And when the occasion allows it, they'll be doing literature-based stories that deal with science and perhaps social studies content areas, so that they also are hitting one major content area through a different way through instruction. So it may be a science story that they're promoting, investigating evidence and looking at different criteria. So they're going to integrate a lot of lessons based on content areas of science and social studies. It may not be a standalone science or social studies curriculum type of lesson, but they're going to begin to integrate a lot of that.
Thank you. You know, we are definitely running or out of time. So Mr. T, there's definitely obviously a lot of interest. There's a lot of questions, I'm sorry, folks, that we just couldn't get to tonight. One of the questions that, came through would be, will some of the policies, with regards to safety, Will there be anything written with how cohorts will work, virtual learning, what this Excelis program is going to be like? Our families are looking for something that's going to be written that they can access. Will something be made available to families beyond emailing you individually?
Or something.
That's a question for you, Mr. T.
No, it can be. I mean, it's going to take time to put it together properly because, again, we don't want to overstate it or understate it. But it can be done. But yeah, it will be done.
Okay, well, you all heard that right there.
There's one more thing I have to mention about the safety that we're doing at the school. We bought desk shields for all the students. So all the classroom, every single desk has a student desk shield. So the idea of a child having to have a mask on all the time, we know is not the best thing. So this is why we bought those shields. This way they can take off their mask in the classroom because nobody wants to nobody wants to wear a mask for that many hours. So this will give them a break. And also, through the generosity of the school, we bought these lanyards so we can have the kids clip on their masks and wear it. So because we know the kids are going to lose their masks. That's a guarantee. So hopefully with this lanyard around their neck, the mask clipped to the lanyard, less losses.
Smart, Mr. T. You know, now that we can't all walk on campus, I'm sure that lost and found thing is going to be huge since we can't see all the things our children lose while they're at school.
Yeah, they lose a jacket, this would be no problem for them to lose.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Again, you know, I just want to close with one other question that we received that, you know, couldn't be directed at our panelists tonight. We received this a couple of times regarding the YMCA before school and after school program. There was a question that since when we do return, and there is a before school program and an after school program that is offered, since we'll be in this blended learning and some students will be on campus some days and not on other days, will YMCA be offering a prorated rate? So I did personally contact the YMCA to ask. They are working on something and have submitted something to the Department of Education for approval. So they are working on that. I just want to reassure you. They also said that they are planning to contact our Nu'uanu families who have signed up for the before school program, after school program with them in the next couple of weeks. So you should learn more about that. I'd like to sincerely thank all of our panelists and my co-host over there for helping us today.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure, Mr. T.
Okay, sorry. Again, the email that I got from the higher up saying that from the 17th to the 20th, things will be, even though it's a Ohana Day, that lunch service will be offered. So those families are free and reduced. They can't come to school if the school is open up. So please pay attention to the news. If we're closed, then of course we're not gonna have lunch. But if school is even partially open, call up the office the day before 8:30 to say if you can come for lunch or not. Okay, because if nobody calls up by 8:30 for lunch, we won't prepare any lunches. Or if you want to buy a lunch and you have money in your account, then by all means, you can always come and buy your lunch. But I can't see somebody coming here for a $2 lunch when it takes you $4 to get here with gas. But anyway, that's an offer for those free reduced families. If you are going to have lunch, call the office by 8:30 to let us know. And breakfast, I think was, oh boy, they're also serving breakfast, so I'm not sure how that's going to work.
We'll wait for your email update. I'm sure you're going to be sending us the details on that, right,
Yeah.
Mr. T?
Yes.
Okay.
Don't say that.
Just we'll make sure that we wait and we get the correct information in there for for breakfast, since you're not quite sure right now. But I just want to again thank all of our panelists. We did run over time, so I want to be cognizant of that. It's almost 6 o'clock. I'm sure families are trying to rush off to dinner at this point or cook if you're not already doing so as you listen to us. So thank you so much for being with us today. This was our first ever virtual event. Couple of things that I did hear is your teacher is your best friend. Contact your teacher if you have questions. What we heard very loud and clear is that in terms of curriculum, asynchronous, or synchronous, schedules, all of that is really, while there's some guidelines overall, it's really up to the teacher's discretion. And so that's, you know, as we start to go down this program and we start to get back into school, they'll be able to help. Another thing is that, you know, we wanted something in writing. So your PTO board will work together with Mr. Toyooka to see what can we get to y'all in writing, additional Q&As. We will be aiming to post today's event online as well. Again, we were not able to get to everyone's questions, so we'll work with Mr. T to get those questions answered in an upcoming email. We are also posting everything on our website, so please go there, nu'uanuschool.org. We are posting the latest and greatest information there as well. As a thank you for everyone who has attended today, you will also be entered into a drawing to win a pair of Nu'uanu branded masks. We are giving away one adult mask and one keiki mask so you can match your students when we are able to return on campus. So we will be doing the drawing after we are past time, and we'll be announcing that via an email. And again, this is our first event. We've got one coming up on September 6th. If you've got additional content ideas, please email me. And if you have any questions, you want to volunteer, you want to become a member, you want to just know a little bit more about Aikane, again, I am your president. My name is Moani Wright-Benoff. Email me at any time, prez@nu'uanuschool.org. We truly appreciate all of you attending today. We look forward to the time where we can see you all back in real life. And until then, we look forward to continuing to connect with you virtually through events like this. So thank you all, really appreciate it, and we will be back in touch. Have a great night, everyone.
I'll buy a used car from you. Hey, thanks, Juan.
Thank you.
Thanks, Toby. Thanks, Phyllis and
Thank you,
Janice.
everyone. Thanks, Mr.
Thank
T.
you all.
Thanks, Phyllis. Thanks,
Hey.
Janice. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Thanks,
Hey,
Toby.
bye.